In this episode of Marie TV, we do have some adult language. So if you have little ones around, grab your headphones now. Well, hello there, and welcome to the Marie Forleo podcast. So my guest today is the incredible Jacqueline Johnson. Now, if you don't know Jacqueline, you are about to meet her and fall in love with her. So here's a little bit more of her backstory. By the time she was 28, Jacqueline Johnson had sold her first business called No Subject, and she invested in one of the country's top female-owned startups called Away. She also launched her second multi-million-dollar company, Create and Cultivate, a company and brand that I personally love. So Create and Cultivate has over 75 events to date. They have hundreds of thousands of followers and attendees. And Jacqueline's also been named a Forbes 30 Under 30, an Adweek disruptor, and she's also been profiled in Fast Company, the LA Times, and Entrepreneur Magazine, among others. Today, we're going to be talking about her first book, which is called Work Party. It's a career manifesto on how to turn distrust into determination, frustration into fuel, and heartache into hard work. And that book is available now. Jacqueline, thank you so much for making the time to talk today, woman.
Of course, you're my favorite.
Well, I told you this via text, but I want to say it publicly. Your book, Work Party, is fantastic. I've read it cover to cover. As you know, I'm in the middle of writing my own, so I know how hard this is, how much work it takes, and you've done a brilliant job.
Well, thank you so much. That obviously means so much coming from you.
So let's dive in. Create and Cultivate, which most people know you for. And by the way, anyone listening, if you don't know Create and Cultivate, you need to Google right after you listen to this podcast. But Jacqueline, Create and Cultivate isn't your first business rodeo. So first, I want to go back in time when you made that big move from New York to LA, and then 3 months later, you were let go. Walk us through some of that time in your life, right before you were starting that first business, and what really got you to say, yes, I can do this, and then actually start doing it.
Yeah, so I was obviously in my early 20s. I was, by all accounts, crushing it at my career. I was moving up really quickly. I was a really early adopter to social media in terms of the corporate side and career side. So I was having all these successes. You know, I was living in New York City and essentially got transferred to Los Angeles for this job. I was so excited. I went in the door super eager and like really ready to crush it, and basically was met with backlash, both culturally from the fit from LA to New York, but also with the job and sort of the environment. And they basically were not looking for someone to come in with big ideas and lots of momentum and trying to basically shake it up. They were like, look, we have a thing here. We're trying to keep it status quo. Like, can you just like sit there and do your spreadsheets? And I couldn't do that. It was not in my personality. It was not something I felt I was, being successful at. I'd come from this environment that was super creative and collaborative, and I felt so inspired by that. And so basically at every turn, I was just like shut down, shut down, shut down. And if you are an entrepreneurial person in a corporate environment that supports you, it's amazing. If you're an entrepreneurial person in an environment that does not support that spirit, it can be the most stifling experience. So essentially that's what happened to me. And about 3 months in, I was laid off, or as I say, politely let go. And essentially it was crippling. It was personally and professionally crippling. I had never felt more devastated, and there was lots of like look in the mirror and cry and watch yourself cry moments. But it was one of those things that honestly transformed my life for the better. And I like to say I didn't turn around and say, I'm going to start my own company. I took months of like wallowing in my sorrows to kind of get over that. So it's definitely, it's brutal, it's difficult. And I also was in a city where I knew no one. So it wasn't like I could lean on my network. I had to start from scratch. So basically, the way my company happened and the way I started becoming an entrepreneur and starting my own business was very slow and steady and sort of happenstance. It essentially started with one client. So I emailed people and said, hi, I got let go. I live in Los Angeles. I do marketing. I do these things. Anyone know anyone who needs someone? And luckily my network came through and I was able to get a few clients. I was working from home. And essentially it was one of those things where I met another woman who was out doing her thing, freelancing, starting her own company. And she basically said to me, oh, hey, like we should get an office space together. And coming from New York City, as you probably know, the thought of office space as a freelancer with zero steady income is like, there's no way I can afford this office space. But in Los Angeles at the time, there was really amazing space available for very, very cheap. So I got this office space. It was great, honestly, just to get out of the house and being in a new city.
Yeah.
Basically, I just started getting more clients and more momentum with my freelance business. Ended up starting a company with that woman, and then we ended up getting insane traction and momentum, and obviously hiring employees. And it was one of those things where we were like, I guess we're a company now. It was not strategic. There was zero business plan or idea going into it.
I think that's where so many of us start. I remember, starting my business at 23. I had no clue about anything. Like looking back, I'm like, how did I have the audacity? And I'm so happy that I did. But I just want to drill into that point a little bit. So many of us start great things in life, not knowing what the hell we're doing. And then also we wind up paying a little bit of a price for that, which I have done many, many times throughout my career, which brings me to you. And that first business did have a bit of a harsh and expensive ending, so much so that it gave you what I thought was very funny. This made me laugh out loud. PPTSS, post-partner trust stress syndrome. Tell us about what happened, how that first business came to its unfortunate end, but really gave you some lessons for growth.
Yeah, well, what happened was, and this is something that at the time I thought was a completely isolated incident. Like, this has just happened to me. This has never happened to anyone else in the history of starting a company, because I was so isolated from like an entrepreneurial community, which will play into the Create and Cultivate story. But what I came to find out was actually this is a very normal occurrence for startups and for companies in general. But essentially what had happened was this company that we had started, which was a marketing and events agency, came together super fast and furious. We didn't know each other that well, both personally and professionally, but we had great momentum and great success early on with the business, which is obviously what you want. However, what we never had was upfront conversations about our roles in the company, our responsibilities, as well as what our shared vision of the company and growth would be. We just were moving so fast, which obviously momentum is amazing. And it's one of those things that you can't pay for. So we were really fortunate in that. However, it caught up to us. And so essentially a few years in, there was some discrepancies between myself and my partner, and it ended in her leaving the company, which for anyone who knows what having a co-founder is like, I mean, they're essentially your spouse. Like
Yes.
this is your marriage, and it's devastating. It's like going through a divorce. And it was really hard, especially because I was so young. This was my first company. I obviously thought this was the end of the road, but I actually kept the business going by myself after that. So I kept it going for, I think, 3 or 4 more years after that, and then eventually sold that company. But that was a heart-wrenching decision as well, because you're running a company then whose name you came up with together, whose, case studies you have together. So you have to kind of take on this new lifeblood around the company and around the employees and really reinvigorate everything around it, because there is this feeling of like something bad happened here.
Yeah.
Which is really difficult to get over. And I don't want to make it sound like I bounced back right away. I mean, I took time, and I really needed to kind of almost believe in myself again, because there was a lot of like, it wasn't even about what she had done or what our discrepancy was. I felt shame for myself. I felt guilty, like I wasn't a good entrepreneur. And it was embarrassing almost for my clients to be like, oh, and she's no longer with the company, and how do you broach that? And there's a lot of shame associated with like failure and things falling apart. And as women, I think oftentimes we take that blame on ourselves.
Yes.
It was really something that was difficult to get through, but getting on the other end of it, what happened was I got a business 101 boot camp coming out the other side of it. and having to take on the finances, the HR, the sort of all the nitty gritty that goes into running a company and not just being the creative or the ideas person, all of a sudden became my reality. And it honestly was like a kick in the butt to get me more established as an entrepreneur. And I learned so much. I mean, I literally watched YouTube videos on how to get a QuickBooks running and all these different things. And it's honestly the best lesson I learned. And honestly, now it's something that I enjoy doing as part of the business.
It's really cool. So one of the things I want to drill into, and y'all, for all the details, you will have to go pick up Work Party and read it because Jacqueline shares everything that went down. It was around money. And I know you and I both share this passion and interest and desire to talk about money. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in our conversation. But I found it interesting, Jacqueline, how, one of the big things that was never really discussed was money and how it's treated. And I've found that in my own career to be so utterly vital, especially when hiring team members. One of the things I've realized is how everyone in my company, we have this shared ethos around money, and people all come from a very, middle class, blue collar kind of working class background. A lot of people's parents didn't go to college like my parents didn't. And I find that the more experience I get, the more important it is to have alignment financially and to be able to have those money conversations at the front end of any kind of partnership or deal, or even hiring people so that folks are on the same page. And I wanted to tell you a lesson that I had learned the hard way in my own career was how important it is to have what I call a business prenup. How if you're doing any kind of deal or you're bringing on a partner that you, just like you said, it's like having a spouse. It's like getting married. And I think prenups are a really good idea because the chance of a divorce is high. You're two creative people or more than two creative people. And the fact that people's lives change and their values change and their goals change, somebody might want out. And if you don't have those discussions at the onset, so much more pain ensues at the back end. And usually it's really expensive.
100% agree. And I love that idea. And I think, it's like no one wants to talk about the ending at the beginning.
Yes.
It's like you have to be clear on your parameters and what you want. And, even further to that is like, I talk a lot about people's relationships to money. I mean, similarly, my parents didn't go to college. They both are entrepreneurs. They work their butts off. Like they're working constantly. And I just grew up around that and thought that was so normal. But, for me, it was like, my relationship with money has been really interesting because I've like always been a worker. I love working and it's so much a part of my personality. And money was like a nice to have, but I was so built on like the vision of building something.
Yes.
Started this company, it was like I didn't even care how much we were making because we had so much momentum and we were going so fast. And like I was like, this is awesome. Like, let's get more people in the door to like work for us and grow. I was focused on that. She wasn't. She was focused more on the money side of things and wanting to make more money or be able to spend more money in different ways alongside our success. And there's nothing wrong with that. They're just two different viewpoints in relationships to how a business should spend money. And when you're equal partners, I mean, that you have to be on the same page about that. I mean, the same could be said for your personal relationships as well.
Yep, I agree. So let's talk about then the comeback year. So you had, this thing, it took a turn, an unexpected turn, you recovered. What I found so fascinating was that when you first started to kind of dip your toe into the world of events, that you went to like 4 or 5 events each week and started taking note of what you felt people were doing wrong, right? Where you felt like there was this opportunity for growth. And I think it speaks to one of your many genius zones, Jacqueline, which is you're really good at understanding the competitive landscape. So I'm curious, what did you notice, for yourself that you guys and what your vision was for what you could do differently?
Yeah, so I had no background in events. And basically, what was happening at the time was I had my blog, which was, getting momentum. The blogger world was still kind of a thing at that point, and I was getting paid as an influencer, and I would get to go to all these amazing events. And what I found was a couple different things. Was one is like the personal element was missing from events. So there was no, you would show up, you weren't really sure where to go, like no one would be guiding you through the experience, and it was kind of just one of those things where people would show up, no one would talk to each other, and everyone would take a picture and leave. And you've been to those events. I know you have.
Oh, of course I have.
And it was one of those things where I'd look on like Instagram or whatever, and I'd be like, these people are posting these pictures as if this was like the most fun experience, and it was totally weird. And it was one of those things where one, I realized like there needs to be a personal touch and a personal element to events that's missing, where it feels more of like an experience than just something to show up and have a logo on something. The other thing I realized was going to all these influencer events was these brands were spending so much money on these events. They were so lavish and extravagant and really beautiful and amazing. And all these girls were posting on Instagram, and all these women were like, oh, I would just die to go to something like that. I would die to like be at an event that had like that type of flower wall or that type of experience. And what I realized was no one's doing this for consumers. Like there's no amazing event experience that is for like the everyday person. And so what I wanted to do, and this is when the sort of the seed of Create and Cultivate got planted, was how do we take this and transform it into an amazing experience for women that looks amazing, has awesome content, that has amazing speakers, and is fun, but also personal. And that's really where I started to kind of like put together those ideas. But the market research part was so important, and obviously going to a ton of events, which you have to do as an entrepreneur anyway, just to network. I realized like there was a huge missing component from networking events where, we've all been to those networking events that are just kind of weird and not fun, and like everyone's like a little out of place. I really wanted to kind of close that gap.
I love that, because my experience of building B School, which we've talked about kind of offline in our personal conversations, the whole reason B School came to be in our brand was because I was desperately trying to learn about entrepreneurship and how to grow a business, because I had no clue. Mm-hmm. And all of the different kind of conferences and seminars I went to, it was 99.999% men. It was like an enormous sausage party. I know that that's probably offensive to some people, but that's honestly how it felt. I felt totally out of place. And there was so much missing from small business education that, like my dad was a small business person, ran a printing shop for years, and I grew up working with him. And I was like, God, my dad never taught me like, this is just so opposite. The ethos was so opposite. My dad would tell me about over delivering and, always going above and beyond and making sure that all the integrity was there and all these things. And I was hearing the complete opposite at many of these conferences. And that's kind of what gave birth to B School. So I feel like, one thing that can often stop women, especially, is, and I'm sure you've seen this just with all of your work and all of the conferences, is so many women can get down by comparing themselves to others. Mm-hmm. But I think the reason I wanted to bring this up was that there's a really healthy way to look at the competitive landscape. When you do it objectively and you do it without emotion, you can really start to see the white space and the opportunity to build something that has not quite been built before. Which leads me to my next area of discussion in the book. I love that you put in the book, Jacqueline, so many, questions to ask ourselves, and there's so much tactical information. And the one I wanted to highlight right now was the 4 questions that we should ask ourselves if we want to start a business. So let's walk through them. So number 1, does my product already exist? And you have a sub question, is there a reason it doesn't exist? So tell me why this is question number 1.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to find a hole in the market, right? Like, where's the white space existing? And I think that really comes down to, like, okay, for instance, with Create and Cultivate, there didn't exist a conference. There was business conferences for women, of course, but there didn't exist a conference that looked, felt, and spoke to millennial women in the way they wanted to. And I saw that as a massive opportunity to kind of come in and create something like that. So finding that white space and then thinking, this is something that I think other women would like, and then talking to everyone you know and seeing this if this is something they would want or want to be a part of.
Question number 2. Am I offering the market a better version of something that does exist? And if I'm honest, is it truly better? So this is digging a little bit deeper, right? And having that courage to be painfully honest with yourself. How'd that look for you?
Totally. And I mean, I think this falls into the disruption category, right? So it's like, you have to look at things like, does car service exist? Yes. Can Uber or Lyft or whatever make it better and easier? Yes. So this is that question of, this exists and I want to make it better. And similarly with Create and Cultivate, it was like, these conferences exist. I want to make them better. And here's how I'm going to do it. And honestly, will this experience be better? And in my opinion, it was. And it took a while. Obviously you have to consider the pricing and the experience and the attendee. And that takes a minute to kind of figure out that formula. But you have to just understand and know your audience so well before taking that leap.
Question number 3. Am I willing to lose everything? This is one of the big ones, right? This is a gut check. How did this look for you?
I mean, this was like, number one, I was coming off of having basically lost everything and hitting rock bottom. And I always joke, I'm like, rock bottom's the best place to start. So with Create and Cultivate, it was really interesting because this is my second company. And what I realized was, I had failed already. I had gone through it. I had gone through the ringer. And I realized I came out okay. So if this was to explode and turn into a total disaster, I knew I'd be ready to take it on, and I knew I could get through it again.
And then question number 4. I love this one, Jacqueline. Is this all you can think about? Is this all you can think about? So in other words, are you obsessed with this idea? So again, curious how that manifested for you as it relates to Create and Cultivate.
You have to be obsessed with your business. It has to be driven by passion, because otherwise it will feel like work. And the reality is for me, Create and Cultivate was a side project. It was something that didn't make money for 3 years. It was something I just did because I liked doing it. So when it came to thinking about it as a business, for me, I became obsessed with it. The idea of it, like, this could be my job. If I play my cards right and I do this right, this can be a business. And so for me, I was obsessed with it because it was personal to me. The mission and the women attending became my friends and sort of my audience. And it's personal. Like, I've never had a company that I take everything so personally for, because I care so much. And that makes me a better businesswoman in running this company.
I love it. And, I think these questions are so important because you and I both know this, and I know you guys listening know this, but it always bears repeating. Building anything, especially a company, from the ground up, it is fucking hard. It is hard work. It takes years. It takes hours. It takes weekends. It takes a lot of tears. And I've never tried to hide that fact. Now, like 18 years into what I do, I'm at a slightly, different stage where I have other perspectives. But whenever I'm talking to someone who's just starting out, I'm like, let's not beat around the bush. This ain't going to be easy. And so those questions, it's vital that you get real with yourself, because if it's not all you can think about, and if you're just trying to start a business to make side money to then do what you really want to do, I'm like, please no, please, for the love of all things holy, don't. Just get a job and then figure out the way that you do what you really want to do.
It's so true. And it really is one of those things where you have to think about everything that's going to come with that, the personal sacrifices that you're going to make, the professional sacrifices that you're going to make. And it is, in a lot of ways, like a lot, you have to give up a lot to get a lot. And I think it's just something it's like a negotiation you have to have with yourself.
Yeah. And the whole idea of work party, which I love because I do consider my work a party now. I did not consider my work a party when I was working for other people. I was the worst employee ever. Not in the sense that I was ever disrespectful. I would always show up early, last one to leave, but I was miserable. I was miserable. And so this whole idea of work party, which is the name of the book, is like, yeah, it's hard, but when you love it, it's so worth it. And you get to write the rules. You get to choose who you're going to work with. You get to make all of this up and create it in a way that it's actually fun, which is, again, why I love you. You and I share a lot of the same DNA. So can you also speak to the fact that, I feel like now, especially for folks just getting into the game, we live in such an instant gratification culture, but I feel like it's so important to reiterate how it takes time to start seeing traction, and success really is nonlinear.
Yeah, you know what the funny thing is about Create and Cultivate? So I've had Create and Cultivate for over, I would say, 6-7 years. And the reality is it only got momentum when my partner and I invested in the company. And that was about 3 years ago. So when it started getting momentum, because we hired employees, we obviously started thinking about it more as a business, it started marketing it and getting bigger names involved and all that stuff. Everyone was like, this company has blown up overnight. And I always thought it was so funny because I was like, well, actually, it's been around for like 3 or 4 years and no one knew about it. And it was so funny because like everyone just thought like overnight success story. And I was like, yeah, right. I've been building this forever, losing money on it and doing it because I like believe in it. And then eventually I was like, I think if I can bring in the resources, this can be a thing. It was able to do that and then see the success. But it was so funny because everyone just assumed it was an overnight success and it was 100% not true.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's true for most of us. And also, I just want to, for everyone listening, you have to understand that Jacqueline's story, you were also leveraging skills, strengths, and the ability to be resilient that you built up all the way from back in your first days in New York City, right? You're bringing all of that with you. And I think that's also important for people to hear, especially if they're kind of going into something brand new. They look at other people, like they may look at you or some of the folks that you profile or someone like me and go, oh, well, they had it so easy. It's like, no, dude, I can trace back to my days in fitness, creating workout DVDs that the experience on camera has helped me with Marie TV. So it's like about really looking back and realizing, to the nonlinear point, all of your experiences can be leveraged to help you in whatever your current project is right now.
And, it was so funny because basically what had happened with Create and Cultivate. So I was running this marketing and events agency. I was doing marketing and events for different companies. So everyone from Microsoft to L'Oreal to startups. And essentially one of my clients at that company said to me, I think you should think about Create and Cultivate as your business. And I was like, no, it's just this fun thing I do and whatever. And he's like, all these people are paying you to build their brands, get their brand out there. You're doing it successfully. You know how to do it. Why wouldn't you do it for yourself? And it was it was an amazing moment because I was like, you're right. I'm getting everyone else's brand out there for them. And I love doing it. I love the strategy behind it and seeing the results, but I was never doing it for myself. And so shifting that mindset and really approaching Create and Cultivate as this is not just a side hustle. It's not just a side project. It's a brand. And what would I do if they were paying me as a client? What would be the advice I would give them? And what would be the strategy I would have them execute? And I really treated it as a client. And I think that's why we had so much success from a branding perspective.
Love it. Okay, I want to switch gears slightly because I got really fired up and was so excited because we haven't really had too much of these conversations before, but I foresee many of them in our future. You wrote, money isn't a 4-letter word. Money is not a bad thing. Women need to start talking about money and stop hating on women who are making money. So I love money, Jacqueline. I also love seeing the horrified looks on people's faces when I say that out loud. I will tell you many times when I'm like, oh, did she just say that? And then like 4 minutes later, they'll be like, can you tell me more? Like, how can I love money? So let's talk about why women having money and power is important, especially when you fired who we'll call Dick, your very dickish client.
Yes, money is power. And the sort of anecdote around that is that I was in a place in my first company where I had this client that was essentially a dick. And he was rude, he was condescending, and all these things were happening. And the beauty was I was in a place in that company where I didn't need his business and I didn't need his money. And so I fired him. And it was one of the most empowering moments as an entrepreneur, and being in that position where you don't need the money. But the reality is, and the reason why I brought this up in the book and why I think it's so important is money is power. And I think women have had this narrative sort of spoken to them through media and television, all sorts of things, saying if another woman's successful, then that impedes on my success. And it's not true. The beauty of women in power is that women in power have money, and then they have money to spend with other women. The reason Create and Cultivate was able to get so successful so quickly was because women in high-powered marketing positions at companies believed in Create and Cultivate and were able to put dollars towards being a part of it. And it was honestly really the crux of our success, because these women came to me, believed in me, pushed it through to whoever they had to at the top, but they really advocated for my success. And I think the more women can do that when they get in those positions of power, and for me, it's hiring women not only as my staff members, but also like women-owned businesses that we use for events and production and florals and food and all those things. The more we can do that, the better we are at, or the more well off we are to actually see change being made of the people in power.
Absolutely. I've loved money for such a long time, and I will never stop learning about. Like the other night, I was at a friend's house with my friend and her daughter, who's like 19. And her daughter was telling me about how proud she is. She's like working her buns off this summer because she's an art major and she's going to study art in Florence in the fall. And she's like, Marie, she's like, I need to save up 5,000. I've already saved up 4,000. And she's like, I know it's not that much money. I'm like, girl, you need to shut up, right? That's a lot of money. At 19 to save. I'm like, be proud of yourself. And then I just found myself over an Aperol Spritz telling her like, here's the 4 money books you need to read. And like, I was like, we'll talk about money any day of the week. But it got me so excited because I, like you, believe it's like when women have more money, everyone wins. Your immediate family wins. Your communities win. I mean, the research on this, especially in the developing world, is conclusive. When women have more money, they generally have less children. The children that they do have better education. Everyone has healthcare. They reinvest in the community. It's like the science is there and we know this in our guts. So I just love that you said like money is not a 4-letter word. And like, let's be real. And I love that you said this in the book. It's like, I make no bones about it. Like Create and Cultivate, it is a business. It's a good business and it makes money. Without money, we wouldn't function. And often I feel like I need to remind people of that as well. I was like, what do you think funds Marie TV? How do you think all this free content comes out? It just doesn't make itself. I have a lot of salaries to pay. That's why we sell things and we sell really good things. But I am proud of making money and I'm proud of being a marketer and I'm proud of being a businesswoman. And I want more women to embrace that fact.
100%. And I think people also have to stop hating on the fact that, like, for instance, you and I, like, we have businesses that are built to help other people, their resources, their knowledge, their education, their all these things. And I think people oftentimes are like, oh, money's part of that. And it might like turn them off for some reason. But you're exactly right. We have salaries to pay. We have staffing, like we have offices, we have things we need to be able to do the work that we're doing. And that shouldn't be a negative thing. So I truly, truly believe like women need to get over that, because I think the more that now when I see I sold my company for $10 million, whoever on Forbes, I'm like, hell yes. Good.
Yes.
And I love seeing these like exits for women. And I actually interviewed Pael from ClassPass at an event, and she said something that I thought was so powerful, because she was like, I'm all about small businesses. Small businesses are great. But what we need are more women billionaires. I want $1 billion businesses, because she's like, I think women think small and we have to stop. We have to build the next Amazons. We have to build the next Microsofts. Like women need to start thinking in the billions. And I thought that was so lovely, because it's something you don't hear often.
Yes. Absolutely. I say A to the men to all of that. It's amazing. So now you also wrote, don't be afraid of those 1-star reviews. And haters can be good motivators. Let's talk about feedback for a second, the good stuff and the bad stuff. What are some examples of some positive growth that has come from your own stinging moments? You know, if you've seen those 1-star reviews, or if people have given you feedback that, you know, frankly, it can be a little bit hard to digest at times.
Yeah, I mean, Create and Cultivate was built off feedback. So, I mean, and to be fair, like a lot of the feedback when we were first starting out was super, it's almost hilarious at this point, because we were so new too. We were just figuring it out. So I remember at our first event, we ran out of water, right? Like, and it's like we ran out of water, the electrical outlet didn't work, the AC went out halfway through, like all of these things that went totally wrong and things that you learn over time, like, okay, we need to have X amount for X amount of people. We need to be more cognizant of this situation or whatever. That feedback, those first conferences, we'd get anywhere between 30 to 50, like, not mean, but negative emails that were essentially like, I felt like I didn't get this experience and da-da-da. And obviously those are heart-wrenching to read and don't make you feel great. But what I did was I took them to heart and I responded and refunded where necessary. And then also took that information, brought it back to my team and said, we got to do better. So it really changed the impetus of the brand. But also some of the best feedback we got was around the fact that we realized half our audience was micro influencers, bloggers, content creators. The other half were entrepreneurs. And they were like, the panels were all mixed and some applied to me, some didn't. And so we realized and set into motion this track system that's built one track for entrepreneurs, one track for content creators, marketers. And we've seen so much success from that. And now I really measure our success after a conference by the amount of feedback emails we get. So coming off of Los Angeles, which was one of our biggest conferences, over 1,500 women, I think we got 3 negative emails. And it was amazing.
Wow.
I couldn't believe it. It was like, and I told our team, and the 3 were like, I forgot to get my gift bag. It was nothing crazy. And really, like, we should pat ourselves on the back because transparently, so much could have gone wrong. Like,
yes.
So many people, it's a live event. You know what it's like. And I think, we've really gotten it down to a science. Are we perfect? No. And do I love feedback? Yes. And I think, but also on the flip side, there's some feedback, and I wouldn't even call it feedback, but more just like hate that you get of people who are just negative Nancy's. They don't want to see you succeed. They find a problem with everything, and it's not warranted or rooted in anything real. And
yes.
for that, I would say you have to tune out the noise, address the issues if need be. But I think for us, it's one of those things like, you're successful when you start getting haters and people kind of like trolling you.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. It's not easy at all. And I think for us, we respond where necessary and we don't engage if we think it's, something where they're trying to get a reaction out of us. And I think it's an important lesson. It's something that happens to everyone, no matter how big or how small you are. But that's just going to happen. And honestly, we use everything as motivation, like fuel for the fire.
I love it. Yeah. Discernment is a really important skill set to learn, especially in this digital age where everyone apparently can say anything they want. So it is important to be able to kind of cull through and extract what's useful for growth and for improvement. And then to be able to toss the things that are just vitriol. And you're like, please move on.org. Okay. Moving on. One of the things that made me so happy was rule number 1. Be a fucking pleasure to work with. I was like, amen, sister. You're right. There will be people better than you or cheaper than you. But if people like working with you, they will always come back. Yes, they will. How'd you learn this lesson?
So this is literally like the backbone of my career. Especially with my first company, I wanted it so bad and I wanted to do a good job so bad for our clients. So I worked my ass off and I always had a smile on my face, even when everything was going wrong and every issue was there. And I think that's one of the skills you have to have as an entrepreneur. And I joke, but I call it firefighting. But you have to be able to, at any given moment, deal with the biggest disaster, the smallest mistake, whatever it is. And you have to be able to approach it with confidence, with politeness, with kindness, and with a solution. And I think for me, I always did that with my clients. I was always transparent about, this is going wrong. Here's how we're fixing it. It's already handled. Or distracting them and it's being fixed and they don't even know it was wrong. So
I love it.
Way to be a pleasure to work with and just polite, even when things are wrong, even when someone's unhappy with whatever it was that happened. It's such a crucial part of our business. And now part of my team that I always say, like, when something comes in that went wrong, you want that initial reaction, like, well, that's not true and that didn't happen, or I don't know what they're talking about. I'm like, nope, let's sit down and let's like write this response and come at it from their perspective and really be that kindness, because people will work with us time and time again because we are easy to work with and we try to deliver the best possible results.
Yeah. And, a great resource for anyone listening who wants more in this, it's actually a staple of our customer happiness team, is a book called Nonviolent Communication. They have book club on this. And it's exactly what you're saying, Jacqueline. It's all about when someone is upset, getting into their shoes and having them feel heard and being compassionate, and then getting on the same side with them and saying, hey, we have some solutions here. Let's make this right. Let's see what we can do to take care of you. I love that. I think it's wonderful. And even though we haven't done a ton of business together yet, I will tell you, you are a pleasure just to be with and to hang with, and it's awesome. Mm-hmm. So moving on to, my life philosophy is everything is figure outable. And one of the questions I get asked is, okay, that might be true, but how do I get started? So I highlighted one of the things that you have repeatedly in the book is you start by starting. And I was like, yes, you start by starting. So I'm curious, Jacqueline, do you use that advice now? And what's the most recent thing that you've started by starting?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's honestly the best advice for any entrepreneur. I think people overthink things to death to the point where they don't even launch or delay launch or don't do anything. Getting something out there is the most powerful thing you can do as an entrepreneur. And you can pivot, you can change things, you can iterate, but you have to launch it and you have to go forward with your idea. And even with things like the book, I was like asked to write the book. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to write this book. Work Party. I'm so excited about it. I had no idea what I was doing. And I just started to write it. And then eventually I was like, this could be really interesting as a podcast. And I was like, I'm going to make a podcast. And I just started to make a podcast. And I think having that attitude of like, I can do this, and obviously bringing in the experts where necessary, is what will define you as an entrepreneur. And you can't be afraid to go and do and launch.
Love it. Okay, we're going to wrap up with this because I think one of the many things I admire about you is your tenacity and your boldness. You have such an incredible skill set to secure high-profile guests and clients and deals, from A-list celebrities to Fortune 500 brands. I love that you go after what you want, and very often you get it. And I'm sure we don't hear about the things that you don't get, but you get enough at-bats that it works. So what are some tactical tips for people that who want to improve their outreach game? What would you tell them?
I mean, the reality of the situation is you can never send enough emails. I'm always out to 1 million people. I'm out to plan A, plan B, and plan C. And I'm always trying to work it out and juggle the 3. And if all 3 come through, great, you're set for the year. If 1 comes through, you're good. If none come through, you're figuring it out and working through it. And I always say, and my team makes fun of me, but I joke and say, follow up, follow up, follow up. Persistence is key when you're trying to make something happen. And look, it can feel annoying, but the reality is, and I've shown my team through example, there'd be like a brand that I'm like, we need to work with them. We need to work with them. And they go quiet. And I follow up 1 month, no response. I follow up a second month, no response. I'll follow up a third time. I don't care. And literally they'll be like, oh, sorry, it's been crazy over here. Yep, we're good to go. Let's do this. And I'm like, this is the reality, because I'm sure, like me, you get 1,000 emails a day. And every day you're like, oh, I need to write that person. I forgot to do that. Oh, they're resurfacing it. Oh, yes, I do want to be a part of that. Following up is so key and crucial. Like, it will really change your business. And I think also being concise with your asks is really important. Like, not these long-winded emails, but like, hey, I love a bullet pointed list. Just like bing, bam, boom. Here are the 3 things I need from you. Can you do it? Can you not do it? And people will really respond to that.
I love it. And I think the volume too, it's like getting ourselves over this perfectionism that can be so pervasive, right? Of like having to get everything just right. And then having the whole narrative in your head if somebody doesn't respond. I can't tell you how many times, Jacqueline, like same thing in my email box. It's like, oh man, I missed that. Thank God that person followed up because I totally wanted to say yes. So I love it. I love it. I love it. So anything before we wrap up that you want to leave people with? Obviously, we have a lot of entrepreneurs, but we also have a lot of people who are just entrepreneurial minded, meaning they're within a company. But I think you and I share this ethos and this philosophy that from now and in the future, if you're going to thrive when it comes to your career, you don't even necessarily have to run your own business, but you have to behave like an entrepreneur if you want your career to thrive.
Absolutely. And that was one of the biggest questions surrounding Work Party was people who were like, if I'm not an entrepreneur, can I read the book? And the reality is it really is for everyone. It's for modern working women. At the end of the day, we touch on everything from negotiating your raise to running a company. And all of those lessons are truly universal and will apply to any woman who's looking to create and cultivate the career of her dreams, whether it's her own company or working within a company and having that entrepreneurial spirit.
Thank you so much, my love, for taking the time to be on the show today. And I can't wait to see all of the things we're all going to create and cultivate together. Thanks so much, Jacqueline.
Thank you.
Now, Jacqueline and I would love to hear from you. So we talked about a lot of great things today. I'm curious, what's the single biggest insight that you're taking away from this conversation? And most important, how can you turn that insight into action right now? Now, as always, the very best conversations happen over at the magical land of marieforleo.com. So head on over there and leave a comment now. Once you're at that magical land, be sure to subscribe to our email list and become an MF Insider. I promise it is so good. You're going to get instant access to an audio I created called How to Get Anything You Want that should be downloaded on your phone and listened to multiple times. You'll also get some exclusive content and giveaways and some personal things from me that I just don't put anywhere else. Stay on your game and keep going for your dreams, because the world really does need that special gift that only you have. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you on the next Marie Forleo podcast. Ready to find your voice and sell with heart? We'll show you how. Get started now with our free writing class at thecopycure.com. Side effects include enlarged profits.